Hello and welcome to the very first Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch episode, our brand new listener response Q&A general gaming discussion show that we have that goes out on the public feed. So everybody's hearing this. We really want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for your support. If you want to get these episodes and all of our public feed episodes a week early, and if you want to get those full premium episodes of Watch Out for Fireballs, the way to do so is by patronizing us at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Thank you. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to the first ever Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch.
Yes, our new experiment in
Dateline, our offices.
Yes.
These underwear-clad weirdos are sitting down on a sunny day. I mean, I'm sitting down on a sunny day. You're sitting down in a winter hellscape.
Yeah. But I mean, so are we going to talk with these? Are we going to talk with those voices the entire time?
No. Yeah.
When is it going to be my turn, Kent?
Where are the Riddlers? Levi, I went over to Levi's house and he cooked some food on an object called the Griddler. And we were talking about the Griddler, the Riddler, the Quizzler, all like creating the extraordinary league of lures. And it was just like, I'd like to make some pancakes. Well, I'd rather ask a question of Batman. You guys are both idiots. I have a quiz for you. You know, just hanging out, being the Riddler, the Quizzler, and the Griddler.
How is the Griddler different than a panini press?
I bet you Levi would like light up if you asked that question, because he was very disappointed with the Griddler.
Okay.
And he's just like, I've always been using a panini press, but this thing says it has Griddler functions. The name of it implies Griddler functionality. And he was just like, I'm going back to my panini press.
Oh.
So the idea behind the Griddler, this is now Griddler cast.
Yep.
Is that the Griddler could also like do like pancakes and shit.
Okay, like if you left it open. Yeah.
Yeah, like you leave it open, it turns into a griddle.
Yeah.
And you close it turns into a panini press. And if you leave it alone long enough, it dresses up in a suit with a bunch of little fry pans on it and asks Batman to catch him.
It tells you how to get government money that's coming to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, when I got this house, I had to buy a stove for it, and I got one with a big griddle in the middle of it.
Griddle in the middle, and it got much bacon.
And aside from how much of a pain it is to clean, it is actually very good.
Oh yeah, griddle. Nothing wrong with a griddle.
No. Not at all. Yeah, so these dispatch episodes, if you are just tuning in and didn't listen to us kind of describe them on the big Patreon announcement at the beginning of the year, this is the refactor of what used to be our listener response episodes. We wanted to put in a little bit more oomph behind them, right? So we've got Q&A from Patreon. We've got kind of free form, longer form discussion of a bigger topic. Again, suggested by somebody from Patreon. And then we have the listener responses to River City Ransom, Owlboy, and Final Fantasy X.
Yeah. So, this will be a little bit more substantial. If you usually skip the responses episode, try this one.
Try it.
And then decide if you'd like to skip it.
And stick around for us to announce what's going to happen in March.
Yeah, don't you want to know about that?
Yeah.
I think you do. But you have to stay until the end because we're extortionist, Batman. And then also if you want to ask these questions, if you want to suggest these prompts and stuff, the way you do that is by being a patron. So, again, that's patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv.
Yeah.
And let's get started. We have a list of questions here. We may not get to all of them that everyone has asked, but we'll get to them eventually in future months. We're just going to kind of pick and choose here.
Yeah.
And I'll start us off.
Okay.
With something that I feel like is kind of easy. And we'll start us with softball here.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit. So Steven asked us to talk a little bit about old boxes that systems came in.
Ooh, I had my eye on that one too.
Yeah, like, are they good? Did they change? Are they different now? Is that good, bad, etc.? Yeah. They were good.
They were extremely good. And the thing that reminded me of that was getting the NES Mini and the SNES Mini.
Yeah. Same. Like, I love the way they recall those, and I think the big difference behind them. So, like, there is a difference there, and they are different, and this is very obvious. But it's just that, like, the industry is now all, Sony and Microsoft are all like, these are not for kids. These are serious computers you're buying, and they come in a black scary box.
Yep.
With a lot of like weird future fonts and neon waves.
Yep. A lot of little diagrams about what goes and went where.
And Nintendo turned into like fucking IKEA about this stuff.
Yes.
And they're just like, how can we make the most complicated cardboard box in the universe from like the Wii onward? Like, the Wii is just like, let's make a reusable box. Like, we want a box that you won't throw out when you move. And that you will eventually give to your kids.
Right.
Like, that is how we're going to make our boxes. But they're not going to be colorful and fun and like full of a weird poster. Yeah. That just has Rob the Robot like screaming Nintendo screens at you and stuff.
It's not going to be plastered all over with screenshots of like what they think are going to be system seller games.
Yes. Yeah. Which was a big part of how those were fun.
Yeah.
It was interesting too. Like in preparation for this, I was like looking through some boxes, old boxes, not ones I had because I don't keep boxes in general now, but keeping old ones. And I love the OG Game Boy box.
The OG Game Boy box is great. The graphic design on that with like the crazy hologram man.
It's a little bit like more. It's like, so it's not quite as like playful and colorful as Nintendo, and I think that's very smart because the system was not playful and colorful,
right? So
they went with that little bit of like kind of virtual reality theming with it, and it's just a very beautiful box.
Yeah. I loved the box that my original PlayStation came in. Like that also, I mean, it was a little bit edging into like, this is a serious computer kind of thing, but it also had that, well, this needs to look at home in a house that also has a bunch of Game Pros in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the graphic design on those is really good.
And it makes me understand, like, I just don't have a lifestyle to collect in-box games and in-box systems and stuff like that, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like, I would like that at some point.
Yeah.
And a fun thing for console kids, like, that's the thing I have the most nostalgia for, but when you go to these conventions, I love looking at, there's always the one booth that's old PCs, and like looking at an old like VIC-20 box or Commodore 64 box, like those things are amazing because it's just the, the great beige plastic and then some guy with a really good mustache, like, playing a game or putting in a disc and smiling at you. Yeah. Shit like that. That's very fun and good.
I love it.
Super, super good. So yeah, thank you, Steven.
Yeah. I'm going to follow that up with one that is pretty topical to me, given that we just had this huge winter storm here. Knackabread says, what would the ideal conditions be for a cozy gaming session? Examples that give a general idea: a certain drink or snack, raining or dark outside, specific season, sitting on the couch, or playing on a handheld in the bed, maybe a cat or other pet close by. Thanks.
Thank you, Necrobrode.
Yeah.
You described a lot of it. For me, like my association for this is strongest with like winter break. In school, that was like, when I'd rub my hands together and be like, time to game. And then when I had my job I had before I moved to Portland, I worked for a university that also closed down for 2 weeks.
Oh yeah.
During and then the next job when I moved to Portland, my eventual job was at a university, which also closed down for 2 weeks in the winter for winter break. So winter break in one way or another has been part of my life for longer than everyone.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, I'd have to work during that time, but not always. And I would just, okay, now it is time to like sit. And for me, it is like sitting in a living room on a couch or on the floor in front of a couch, which is, a weird thing that I like to do, with a throw blanket over my lap and a cup of coffee. And
the key component for me is the absence of any kind of hard out that will pull me away. So like it cannot be a cozy gaming session if it is 1:00 and I have to be somewhere at 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if even though it's a huge amount of time, it's just
it's very rare that I will play video games for 5 hours, but the sense of an impending commitment kind of swipes that for me a little bit.
Me too. Or even impending sleep. Like for me, the cozy gaming session happens in the afternoon, even though I do the lion's share of my gaming in the evening or late at night.
Yeah.
But if I, a lot of times I won't actually start kind of like doing my gaming for the day until like midnight. Because I was just doing other stuff during the day, or just doing work, other kinds of work, like non-playing video game work.
Yeah.
And that's never cozy because I'm like, I need to go to bed in like 2 hours.
Yes.
But to be cozy, I agree with you. Like out.
Yeah. The least cozy gaming session is 10:30, and I think I'm within spitting distance of the end of this game.
That's extremely cozy.
Or that is the least cozy because
I said uncozy.
Right. Because who knows? I could be wrong, and I might not go to sleep until 1:30. But fuck if I'm going to leave the last chapter of this as an orphan and pick it up later on.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not
that guy got really fucked by Metal Gear Solid 2 and the 45 minutes of ending.
Right.
For that. And that was also, you couldn't pause and I had to piss.
Mm-hmm.
That was as uncozy as I've been.
Yeah.
I had this last week, I was going to go to San Francisco and visit and do some podcast stuff, and I could not because my cat got sick, which was a bummer. But the nice thing was we had cleared the time. So I kind of had a winter break a little bit. I had to just keep an eye on my boy, and I was worried about him, but I had 2 days where I could not have that deadline.
Yeah.
Because I had pre-cleared it, and it was pretty glorious.
Yeah.
Actually, it felt really good. I think what I'm going to do in the future is try to set aside that. One of the a goal for 2019 for me in general, and it's part of the Patreon relaunch. My kind of input into that came from this perspective of 2019 being the year where I cultivate and kind of improve and work on existing projects rather than start new stuff. And one of those things I think is working some downtime into my schedule.
Yeah.
For Duckfeed, even down to a day a week. Just in general that I protect, and maybe a couple days in a row in the winter.
Yeah.
And try to give myself back that winter break feeling.
Yeah. That's reasonable.
Yeah. I think it will be very fun.
So yeah, for me, it's all about time. The coziness factor, the coziest, as an adult, I really enjoy waking up early to play games for fun.
Yeah. That's tons of coz.
Yeah. I don't do assignment play before 10 a.m. So
yeah. I'm gonna move us into something a little bit more meaty.
Okay.
Mostly because I just have a good answer for it, so I can go first.
Okay.
If you guys had the time and money and skills and could be the lead designer, what type of game would you design? Either a sequel or a new IP. What mechanics would you borrow from other games? This is from Nick Gumo. And like I said, I have a question. I have an answer, so I can go first if you'd like.
Yeah.
But also I can defer.
You sound really excited, so I don't want to stop you.
I have been on for years. So first of all, I had this idea and then it came out in the terms of Thief Simulator.
Oh,
so that was what I wanted. And then the game came out.
Right.
And it's not perfect. There are things I would do differently in that game, but it came out and it's still one of my favorite games of last year, by quite a bit. It's in my top 5, I think.
Yeah.
I love it. But I want the totally very, very open D&D immersive sim.
Yeah.
I want an immersive sim, so it's a series of cities, think Dishonored levels, so not like Skyrim. Some of those could be wilderness or caves or whatever, and have the same approach to problem solving that a Dishonored or Deus Ex has, but have it be suited to classes. So when you start, you do a full D&D creation, character creation session.
Yeah,
and then you take that character through that world. And you can, if you're a thief, you're doing Dishonored shit, and you're climbing up in rafters and hiding and stuff. And if you're a mage, you have all these spells that do various ways to get around things. And if you're a fighter, you can be head on, but you could also intimidate people and do things like that. And just have it be D&D licensed. I don't want any specific new setting, a Forgotten Realms immersive sim.
Yeah.
Is what I want.
That sounds really good. So I like that, because my question was going to be, a huge part of D&D is working in a party, right? It sounds like you want a first person Quest for Glory game.
Yeah, pretty. That's another way to put it. D&D, because I know I like that iconography, and I'd want magic and such to work the same way. But And maybe it is like takes that page from Neverwinter Nights where you can have a companion with you, but I wouldn't want it to be online play, because one, that breaks down, that'd be so complicated if you had all these problems that had to be answerable to a mixed party like that. And two, just like online play ruins everything. And, like right. One co-op buddy is good, but once you just introduce, then it becomes Fallout 76 and it's garbage.
Yes.
So like I would not want to like have a party of people I met online.
Right.
It's not that aspect of D&D. It's more like it borrows the verb set and feel of D&D more than the actual experience.
Yeah. Like mine, like the nascent idea that I had in my head, obviously it'd be horror. I would want it to be system based and investigation based. And it turns out that Call of Cthulhu kind of matches what I had in my head for like what I would like to lead. Either that or something like, that's coming out, like the Sunken City looks like something I would love to get on board with. But yeah, just something along those lines.
That would be awesome. And like Call of Cthulhu is a great like touch point, because that game I like that game, but it has a lot of missed potential. And adding more investigation to that, because the way that investigation works in that game is much closer to an adventure game.
Yeah.
Like at some points it's like a walking sim. It's kind of like Telltale's Call of Cthulhu in some ways.
Yeah.
Which fucking sign me up, kind of. Like that, like I said those words out loud. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's adding a little bit more rigorous investigation, even just to like an LA noir level to it, would be really cool.
Yeah. I love detective shit.
Yeah. Detective mixed with horror is kind of like where those things meet, like that there lies Call of Cthulhu. There's not a whole lot of like, let's get Sherlock Holmes in the case of the missing vampires, like kind of stuff. Like there's not a lot of horror elements that there's some of that, but there's, for the most part, that way Cthulhu lies. And I think that would be really cool.
Yes.
That's a great idea. And I would play that game.
Yeah. Good question. Let's see here. I like this one just because of the reference. Christopher asks, do you fellas have any video game versions of Homer Simpson's 10-foot long moldy sandwich? As in games you should just leave alone, but can't stop yourselves from playing. Monster Hunter, how could I stay mad at you, old friend?
Yeah, that is Chris's Monster Hunter aside.
Yes. So like this is just a venue for me to explain something really goofy. So over the last year, Zach Gage released a game called Flip Flop Solitaire on iOS, and that was incredibly good. It's a great variation on Klondike Solitaire. And I played that and I was like, this is good, but my specific itch is for just like regular solitaire. So I went onto the App Store and I downloaded just the most basic ass, like ad supported, I think it was literally made by Zynga, solitaire game. Cool. And I just played it on my iPad compulsively, like while I was going to bed or just in between things. Like, I'm just going to play solitaire. And the thing that made me uninstall it from my device in horror was I got an achievement for 24 hours played.
Oh,
yeah.
That's too much solitaire, my friend.
I know.
I think that's how much solitaire I played my entire life. Like, I don't hate solitaire or anything.
No, it's fine.
But it's a real, like, there's nothing else on this computer kind of thing is what I associate it with.
Yeah. I don't know if I just wanted something to do with my hands while I thought about other stuff, but yeah, that was a real, that was a real, ooh, this sandwich is purple now kind of moment for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a good one because I don't want to quit the like things. Like,
yeah, the
closest thing to that is Isaac, which is like a real, like, just default, I want to spend 45 minutes like laying in bed cuddling with Pocket, and I want to do something. So I'll play some Isaac, just throw on a run. But it's getting close to, until they release the next big content patch, might need to put it down, just because it's like I'm running out of new things to see in it. Like, it's extremely fun.
Yeah.
I still love it. I still think it's still one of my favorite games of all time, but it is something that I do have a little bit of that, like, this is an old sandwich feeling, just because I have a little bit of that feeling like I could be playing something new and getting some new experiences, and I'm not, or doing some work, and I'm not.
Yeah.
So I definitely have a little bit of that that feeling. For a little while, and it's not so much now, but for a little while, the Microprose Magic the Gathering Chandelar game was like that for me too.
Oh yeah.
Where, because it's very run based. It's actually like, it's not a roguelike or anything, but you do just sit down and do a run. That's a self-contained character.
Yeah.
It's like longer than that, but it's kind of how it feels. And it was like super janky, and it was just me playing in very familiar waters.
Yeah.
I love that game. If I felt good about making you learn how to play Magic, like I would love to do it for WoF, because it's a good video game.
We've talked about this before. I'd be down for it. Yeah.
It just would it doesn't onboard you very much.
Yeah.
It's a cool game. And the fan support on it's amazing. Like, I had a big burst of that when I found the patch where people had patched in like sets as recent as like 2007.
Oh God.
Into it, and then but then I fell off it again.
Yeah.
And now I play actual Magic in Arena, which thank you fucking Brian Wade for ruining my life and making me spend actual dollars on a fucking virtual
cards.
Piece of shit.
Oh man, the biggest trick the devil ever played.
Yep, that Brian Wade ever played.
Do you know that guy still has the gall to have his Twitter bio be certified sweetheart, according to Gary Butterfield?
Yeah, and now I don't know, man.
I'm happy you're on board. Like, getting you into Magic is not necessarily as bad as catfishing you with a Star War, but
no. It's
he is a sweetheart though.
Yeah, Brian's good. Yeah. I would like to meet him someday. He's supposed to come out to PRG, and he's never done it.
No.
And like, to be fair, I've never come to just come to him, but
yeah.
I think it would be, I think it'd be cool if to meet him at some point.
The time when I hung out with him when he came to Cincinnati was very good.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Yeah. Here's a question that can be probably pretty quick. Matthew Penner asks, I've heard you guys talk about tabletop RPGs for a decent amount, but you play board games. If you haven't, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition is the best Lovecraft game out there. Secondly, there are a ton of board game adaptations of video games of various levels of success. Could be great topics for adaptation decay.
We agree.
We agree. The main reason why I wanted to grab that is because I really want to do some adaptation decays on board games. I would be willing to, after I've played it, to mail my copy of Four Souls over to you if you can get some people to play it, because I'd love to do an adaptation decay on that.
Four Souls, what's that based on?
That's the Binding of Isaac.
Gotcha. Okay.
Card game he kickstarted for like a ridiculous amount of money this year.
Huh.
But I would love to do that and have Will on.
Nice.
And do like a crossover. I'm way into that second bit. So, and just now the board game design has just become like, back in the day, a board game based on a video game was going to be some derivation of Chutes and Ladders or some bullshit. Like, it was always going to be that. Like, I have the Skeleton Warriors board game, and it's really, really bad. Like, you move around trying to get these crystals, and when you get into a fight, when the characters are in the same place, the mechanics of the fight are you both roll a dice and see which one is higher.
Oh God.
And if you have a crystal, you add +1 to your thing.
Cool.
And that's literally the depth of the mechanics.
Yeah.
We're way beyond that now. So like, even, like there's a Fallout game that came out. There's that XCOM game that's pretty much 1-to-1 to the computer game. There's a Portal game, and I have no doubt those are all at least a little bit interesting. Just because board game design has just become very advanced. Yeah,
the XCOM game is really, really good. I played that with Dennis and the other level folks, minus Jala, for geographical reasons. But played that with them. It's not necessarily 1-to-1. It's actually really interesting because each person takes a different role, and it's cooperative. In a really cool way. So it's not like a tabletop strategy game kind of thing like D&D. It's more about like, I'm the science officer and I will determine how we designate these points. I'm the person who handles the kind of the air combat kind of stuff. I'm the person who handles the ground combat.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I had heard like that it was a lot closer, that like the actual combat is doing a lot of the same kind of like die rolls and checks that you do in the actual game.
There may be 2 different XCOM games.
That's what I'm thinking, because the one I heard doesn't sound like what you described.
Yeah. The one that is app governed, like the one where you said like pick the difficulty level in the app is that's the one that I've done. I don't know that.
Gotcha. It's neat that they can take those different approaches to it too.
Yeah.
We got to do XCOM for the show at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like horny for XCOM. Triple XCOM.
Yeah.
So I like board games too. We have our game night where we mostly play tabletop games. We have game brunch once a month, where we play board games, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad.
Yeah.
And board games, living card games, that kind of thing. We're currently playing Descent, which I think is bad. I decided that last time we played. I had a creeping feeling of unsatisfaction through it, and last session was the one where I decided this is a bad game.
Oh.
We're going to give it one more shot.
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot of design flaws that maybe I will grab one of those dudes and do a Duckfeed Presents on, just so I don't lay it all out here. But
yeah.
It is a bad game. But the flip side of current good board games that I like is me and Levi started playing the Call of Cthulhu living card game.
Oh.
And I was surprised by how very fun that is. It is cooperative. It's like tense, has varied goals. It has a really great, like, the flavor's really good. Like, there's weird ways you can, like, there's one where the cards were laid out in a 3x3 grid to map a town.
Mm-hmm.
And you could, by seeing which cards connected to which one, I was like, oh, there's a river here.
Yeah.
And, like, it never tells you that. It's just like, oh, this would make sense. There's a bridge right here and there's a river here. Yeah. And it just, like, it wasn't ever confirmed. It just, like, it has a little bit of that, like, care and sense put into it.
Yeah. That sounds really cool. Yeah, I haven't really played an awful lot of board games. Most of my exposure has been through Dennis and just kind of hanging out with those folks. For the past 3 years, we've been doing time stories, which is a strange kind of thing because the base system is there and like all of the different scenarios and their mechanics are contained in these modules of cards that are put out. And it is kind of a storytelling game. And it has some mechanics, like each person has a different character who's got like a different class. What the classes are depends on what the setting is. The modules have been really inconsistent, though. Like the one that comes with it is, again, like a Lovecraftian thing in an insane asylum that is kind of redeemed by the fact that it has an awesome meta puzzle.
So we played that one.
Oh, yeah?
I played Time Stories. That's the only game I played, and I did not like the writing of that one.
Okay.
Like, I thought it was not very good. Like, the meta puzzle thing is a cool idea.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years, so I don't remember the specific issue we had with it. There was some kind of piece of bad signaling in it, though, I felt.
Yeah.
And this is me half remembering stuff. But it's interesting. I've seen you post pictures of Time Stories, and Will, who is the one who initially bought Time Stories, really wants to get another shot because apparently kind of in board game circles, that first story is not particularly good, and they get a lot better. So
stay away from the one called A Prophecy of Dragons. Because
the prophecy, what a grim portent on the Prophecy of Dragons.
It is really, really bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off with that. I just
no. I'm happy to hear that you played it. I don't remember being incredibly impressed by the writing of it. It was like the thing that left me coming away from that was that led to me coming away from it positive was the meta puzzle. You know, like that was particularly inspired.
The writing of it wasn't like egregious or anything. I just remember wanting, since that's such in my wheelhouse, wanting like a better articulation of that flavor. And I remember very distinctly being a little bit annoyed with the core kind of looping mechanic of it.
Yeah,
like it is set up in a weird way. And then, again, this is half remembered, so you can correct me if this is wrong. But set up in a way to where like you are set up in these kind of increasingly widening loops as you get more and more information as you restart your kind of time jumps. And having that as a core mechanic of this kind of you're not going to be able to succeed until you kind of put in the time.
Yeah.
Gave it a little bit of that feeling of like a grind to me. Like, oh, like we can't win this first time. It's just exploratory. But then by the end, other than this, like, and I think the reason the bad taste was in my mouth was because at the end, whatever that little bit of bad signaling was, which, you know, the unsatisfying thing for people who are big fans of that game or are listening, they're not going to like, is that I can't remember what it was. But whatever that was meant that we put in that grinding, and what felt like it should have been not a gimme, but like a good solid puzzle at the end kind of didn't feel like it was.
Yeah.
By the end, it's like, oh, we put in all that grinding, nothing really happened with it. But that was still necessary to get this thing that kind of like miscommunicated to us.
Yeah,
you know?
I know what you're saying. That looping mechanic, like it's kind of the whole thing about it. But also, I don't care for what that does to, like, okay, you're playing the game, and once you realize you can't succeed on the first go, you're like, okay, we're gonna cast as wide of a net, and we are talking about, like, on the next run, which of these things are we going to do? while
Yes.
we're doing it, and it kind of takes you out of the moment in a kind of unsatisfying way.
It's weird. Yeah, it's a little bit weirdly gamey.
Yeah,
You know, in a way that is not, just like didn't feel super satisfying to me.
Yeah. So as bad as A Prophecy of Dragons is, it is the one module we've played that has a save point mechanic, which is just like there, at one point there's a map changeover, and when you come back, you just come back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It is like, I love that we have seen, and maybe some of the stuff had happened before, but it does just really feel like we're have been seeing this really, really creative, kind of explosion in like what you can do in board games.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a board game with a save point would never happen.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that is unusual. That is a nonsense phrase, and actually, it works.
Yeah,
and it's kind of cool. Like it's really awesome to me.
No.
So, yeah. Good question, Matthew.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Let's do one more of these and then move on to kind of the next segment.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think.
Let's see. This will be a segue into the other stuff. Do you find it tough to play games that aren't for the show? Or do you miss playing games done under a deadline? That was asked by Taylor.
Taylor Goodman.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sometimes. But generally for me, it is because that is just the nature I found of being self-employed, where I constantly feel like there's homework I'm not doing.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I am ahead or caught up, I always feel like, boy, it'd be nice to get a little bit further ahead.
Yeah.
And I have to really actively fight that.
It's like drinking salt water.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you always put salt in your eyes. Yeah, I just, I want to drink the salt water.
Mm-hmm.
So I do find it hard, but do manage to get through it.
Yeah. For me, just the idea of playing games on deadlines, it's not that I don't miss it. In fact, I like that pressure, because left to my own devices, I wouldn't finish games. And the way that I've found it best to play games for the shows is to like break them out, and kind of plan progress. Like, I know how many chapters there are going to be in this, and I know that if I am on pace to beat this at the right time, if I'm up to this point by now, like, just basically it's just like playing it on a deadline lets me budget it so I can actually give myself enough time to not feel rushed and crushed. I think there's probably maybe a valid opinion that sometimes we don't like things because we rush through them. I can see that where that would come from. But it's just not really the case for me.
I don't feel like it's the case for me either. Like, yeah. And it's funny, I don't want to sound defensive, because when people say that, it always feels a little bit like they're, it's my, and again, this is, I don't mean to come off, I don't mind that as feedback. Mm-hmm. It does come off as a little bit dismissive though, because it comes off a little bit like the only way you could have that opinion that is different than mine is because you had this different experience.
Yeah. And it feels like what I want to respond to that with, and I've never done it because it would just escalate the situation, and it's not my place to do that.
Well, and it does, people, when they say that, they don't mean, they're not being hostile.
Right.
There's no reason to antagonize them or anything, or specifically call anybody out, and especially not in any medium in which we could do that, because like if it's on Twitter or Facebook, other people could jump in, and that's not our goal.
No.
It's not that important that we want to like get people for this.
Yeah, I chafe at that, because what it comes across as is definitionally you cannot talk about this on a podcast. It's like a Heisenberg thing. You cannot talk about this on the podcast because observing it the way that you do makes it so you do not have an accurate impression of it.
Yes. Yeah. It reminds like there was something about was talking about it, and like I won't call it the person, but we were talking about, and it was on Slack where somebody brought up that idea, essentially that you can't do that, and the way that they framed it, I'm not calling this person out, I just happen to disagree with them about a thing, was that they were saying like a lot of your pacing concerns come from playing on a deadline, and the way they had put it initially, and I don't think this is a less nuanced version of their take, but an idea I disagree with, whether it was theirs or not, is the idea that if something, it was almost like they were positing that because if you have all the time in the world for something, it cannot be poorly paced.
Right.
And that's not the case. Like, pacing is just a way you can make a critical argument about something.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with like a deadline. in general, like I think we've actually been one of the ways that that feedback also can kind of get a little bit under my nail, like not in a serious way, but is that I think we've been really open about when we are wrapping something up on a deadline.
Yeah.
Like we will just say, like at the end, we'll be like, yeah, this is near the end and I was done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or like, oh, like I beat this right before it came out. Like we've just said those words on air before.
Yeah.
Like when we are that pushed, but we've been doing this long enough to where that happens so rarely.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I have a lot more time to play a game than I end up using.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I'm, if I am ever rushing, it's not because it's deadline play. It's and I end up thinking, not liking the game very much.
Yeah.
It's not because it's deadline play. It's because I want it to be over.
Right.
It's like, and it's not, just not about the deadline thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you get to something that is incredibly poorly paced, I don't know if this is if this is the way it is for you. For me, it makes it harder to go back into it. And then that leads to procrastination, and that leads to kind of a resentment of the time that I have to put into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
whereas if I was doing it for any other reason, I would just not play that game anymore.
Exactly. It's not a question, like so many things. It's like when people talk, this will actually segue really well into our topic actually for this episode. But when people talk about forcing yourself through a difficult part of a game, or like how if you watch a YouTube of a game instead of playing a part because you couldn't get past it, it's like it's somehow cheating. And they posit that as if it is a decision between getting the desired experience, according to that person, or doing this YouTube thing, when in fact it's getting that desired experience or getting that YouTube thing or quitting.
Yeah.
Getting the desired experience, according to the person who's making that critique, is never on the table.
Yeah.
Or even to the devs. Like there are certain games where I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not, just doing it is just not an option. Like it's either I watch the thing on YouTube, or I walk away from this and never play it again.
Yeah.
And that's that's the thing. And it even happens in, I get some flack for feeling that way about JRPGs because that genre is the designed way to do that. And even like a lot of times the market, like the reason why Persona games are 1 billion hours long is because they never come out. So the fans want them to be very long, and they are made for like playing on, a Japanese subway.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of ways, like it is an acculturated thing to be very, very long and something you pick at over the course of months.
Monster Hunter as well.
Monster Hunter. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that those games are just too fucking long for me. And it has nothing to do with, has nothing to do with, or I remember what I was going to say, sorry. But it has nothing to, the fact they're too long doesn't have to do with it being a deadline. It's just like, I'm not interested in that experience.
No.
But I was going to say, like, even outside of that genre, like I'm finding a great many things to enjoy about Pyre. I am very much struggling to sit down and play it.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with being on a deadline. It's just like, it's not very fun in my hands.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not very fun in my hands. And like, what I'm doing is not very fun in it. And that's obviously that's a patron request. I don't mean anything untoward to that person. It's just, and there are a great many things to like about it that I do like, and I may end up turning around on it. But as it is, it has nothing to do with it being long or me playing it for the show. It's just that feeling of like, ugh.
Yeah.
If it would be, I would put it down forever instead of picking it up every couple weeks for the year.
Yeah.
That people would want that to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's move on to a different category of question.
Yeah, let's move away from games. Do you want to go into shows or life?
Let's do a little pop potpourri. Yeah. Let's do both. Because they're both short categories.
Yes. It's your turn. I picked the last one.
Yeah. Let me see. Here's one that I want to give a shout out, and I think is a good question, and I like where this goes. My Marvelous Year, who is Zach. Shout out to that blog. That is a very cool blog, and I think also a podcast where they go through Marvel comics and kind of pick what is worth reading from the year of comics.
Oh, nice.
So like you might know that like, 60s Marvel, there's cool stuff that happened, but what's actually good comics from that?
Yeah.
I believe that is the same thing. I did a little Googling and I'm pretty sure it's the same person, unless it is an SEO nightmare. But I believe that that's the case. So shout out to that. And they ask, one genre of game that you never seem to have covered for WoF, though I might be wrong, is the roguelike. Obviously, Gary's a fan of the style of game. Is there a reason you avoid it for the show? A lack of traditional narrative and structure, perhaps? And no, there's not a reason that we avoid it, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason I want to do more of this stuff, I think the reason why it hasn't come up, like Avoid is really active. I think the reason it hasn't come up is not because of the lack of narrative structure. It's the fact that it is hard to be comprehensive with them in a similar way to like TF2.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it just it is more of a jungle gym, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to do more of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things, for WAF is we don't want there to be a type of game that's off limits for it.
Right.
Like you can critically consider any game regardless of whether, we tend to take a book club kind of narrative approach, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So I want to do more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just we haven't done it in the past because a lot of times, like to cover, Engaband or something like that is, people are still finding, or NetHack, like people are still finding things in that game. Like that is so deep.
And they're still under active development in a lot of, in NetHack's case, right?
Yep.
The other thing is that you tend to have more experience with these kind of games than I do. So there would be it would just lead to you describing things to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we would have to find one that we both we're going into kind of blind, I guess, so we can achieve parity and decide when we're tapping out, what does the end look like, and they're cool games to talk about for that kind of thing. It would be fun to do Enter the Gungeon or something, but defining when that's over is difficult as well. So it's not so much the fact that there's not the narrative, because there are plenty of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah.
It's that they just are really weird as far as being kind of perpetual case.
If you were just kind of looking through our back catalog, I could forgive you for not noticing that this applies. But one that we have done that falls under a definition of this is Final Fantasy Fables Chocobo's Dungeon, actually.
ToeJam and Earl.
ToeJam and Earl, yep.
Yeah. So we've done a couple of them that are like that, and I would like to do more personally.
Yeah.
So,
this one's pretty fun. Aaron asks, what were some of the alternate titles considered for the various shows before you decided on what you did? How did you come up with some of the names?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I think the only good trivia answer I have for it was that the joke name I had for Days of Future Cast was Age of Apocalypse. A talkpocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, that was just a joke. I don't think that was ever serious.
Yeah. Monster in my podcast at one point was going to. I suggested some kind of monster manual.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And monster of the week of the day, I think was one of the joke names for that as well.
Yeah. Watch out for fireballs. That was your suggestion based on the wizard. That line from the wizard. Bonfire Side Chat just kind of came out wholly formed, like Athena from Zeus's forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the only ones.
Yeah, everything else either just kind of everything to Guppy Will just decided on that. Teenage Dirtbags, we just decided on that. A lot of them just kind of came about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let me see. If money, space, and time were no object, describe your dream house. What would that be like? Where would it be located? What kind of game rooms and gaming setup would you have? And other cool things would you build into it? This is Greg Polander. I've got an answer for this if you need me to go first.
My answer is real boring. My ideal house would be the house that a Stephen King protagonist would live in. On a lake in a cabin on the side of a mountain.
Covered with mist.
Kinda, yeah. Potentially, the missed potential is a really
there's a lot of missed opportunities in the house.
Yep. Yeah. And just enough room for a modest collection of arcade games would be my would be what I would want. But it'll just generally like old style kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would do I want to look like a mid-century kind of 50s Fallout-y thing. I like those aesthetics. With that kind of vintage furniture and the with weird, Z-bracket bookshelves and stuff. And then I would want a room the room that Lazy Game Reviews has with a bunch of old PCs and computers with their setup monitors and just a big game library of running old computer games on original software.
Nice.
With sound blasters and the like. And and a couple arcade cabinets. I think that like I love arcade cabinets and such. And there are very few arcade games that keep my attention for a long time, so it's hard to curate a collection. I would want to pick like one or two and just have them in that room as well. But it would be very cool to have that, and I would need that to be a windowless basement.
Yes.
I do not need windows or natural light in that room. I'm not making a joke. I would want that to be like kind of dank.
But Mo.
Okay, the dank. I would need that dank.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Obviously, one of the arcade games would be a cocktail.
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Was that your question that you asked?
That was mine.
That was yours, yeah.
Let's do two more and then move on to the subject.
Yes, let's do that. So Michael asks, my kitten just knocked my phone off of the desk and cracked the screen. What is the most damage a pet of yours has ever done to something in the home? Any funny cat stories would also be welcome.
I don't know that I've had a cat really destroy anything other than like the worst thing, like knocking a book into the bathtub when I was like reading it.
No.
You know, that happens. But that's really it, I think. So I've had a couple, big kind of like either like source books, like old source books I was reading in the bathtub because that's me, or comics that have fallen into a bathtub and gotten waterlogged.
Yeah. For me, I haven't had a cat for very long. I haven't really learned that you don't leave like open water bottles laying around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She came along and knocked over a bottle of water on my desk. Fortunately, it didn't like run into the Apollo twin or anything. That would be $1,000 loss, and that sucks. It really just kind of got into my keyboard and ruined a couple of my notebooks. Like they're dried out now, but they're all crinkly. I wouldn't want to write in them anymore.
Yeah, that's a bad feeling.
Yeah. I thought my keyboard was ruined because it was acting really weird, but after a couple days of just kind of drying out in a towel, it works fine. So
that's great.
It's like an Apple wireless keyboard with a numpad on it. It's like not cheap, but yeah. It's I had a brief moment of annoyance, but then I realized it is my fault. I was the person who didn't consider this, and she is an animal. So
yeah, she doesn't know.
Yeah,
probably.
Maybe.
We never know. I'm gonna do one just because it's a little bit easy, and then also because people could reasonably want to know, is kind of our last question of this round. David asked, how long do we see this run of Bonfireside Chat going? And I don't. Like, that is impossible to say for sure. We don't have any plans to end it or anything.
Right.
I can see it ending if we run out of stuff to do.
Yes.
And that's sort of it. Like, I think other than that, I think we'll be good for the foreseeable. And we have a lot of content to kind of do on it.
Yeah. We've got a big list, and like there are bits and bobs being added quite a bit. And also we don't know what From's next moves are beyond Sekiro. Right.
Yep, that's all we got.
Yeah. So no projected end.
Yep, yeah. No projected end. So it's a good way to put that, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for your questions. If your question did not get answered this round, it will be in future rounds.
Yes.
Keep asking them. We'll put up new prompts, but we have put these into a document so you don't have to like keep track of the old one. This was fun, and we're gonna do more of them. Everyone's questions will be answered.
Yes.
So it just might take a little bit of time. We just don't want these episodes to be like, 3 hours long.
Right.
And that's not for us. It's not because we don't have the time for it. It's because I think it would make worse content.
Yeah.
Let's get into something. Do we want to do listener responses, or do we want to do the big one?
Let's do the big one.
The big one.
The big one.
Okay, so we have once per time. We're gonna have kind of a longer discussion when somebody asks a question or suggests a prompt that suggests a more nuanced or kind of comprehensive conversation. And this month, Toke asked this question: difficulty in games. When is difficulty good or bad? When can it be useful as a game design tool? What are the hardest games you've ever played? What are examples of good and or bad hard games? And what are examples of good and or bad easy games? Yeah, there's a lot there.
There's quite a bit there. For my own purpose, I've kind of like gone and just did a little bit of general research and came up with a couple of bullet points that I just want to bring forward in the conversation. I tried to find what is the first game with a difficulty selection, but that information, as far as I can tell, does not exist.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know.
Yeah,
it feels like that would be way earlier than because it depends on a difficulty selection for the user is one thing, but then also arcade games have always had that.
They've always had the dev switches, right?
Yeah. Where you can kind of change that. So that's probably very old.
And, Atari games, you have like the different game, you have the game button, right? Yeah. So you could switch modes on that as well.
I love how non-specific that is. That's essentially the Venture Brothers problem button. Like you just like toggle it to game or not.
Yes, it's just game yes or no, and because it's an Atari, it is always on yes. It's just glued there.
You selected yes, by which you mean no. The correct answer was yes. So it's always been a big thing as far as like selectable difficulty goes for sure. Do you have a default? I have like a type 5 I want to bring to this too, but I want to kind of go through these in turn. Do you have a default difficulty mode? Do you have like does it depend on genre? What do you choose for this when it is a user selected difficulty?
I always go with normal, and I have stopped ever being concerned about bumping down to easy. If it's the difference between finishing a game or not. The biggest example of that last year was Prey, actually.
Yeah. Yep. The end of Prey is a bummer.
Yeah.
I love that game. I love that game.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
looking forward to covering it at some point, but the ending of it is not, it kind of runs out of tricks.
Yeah.
And again, just for people who are very frustrated by that, like, you could push through and have this feeling of satisfaction I had. That's not on the table. Like the two things on the table are me never playing this or me doing this.
Right.
Me switching to easy or walking away. It's not a question of me switching to easy or having the experience that you had.
Yes.
And I'm not calling anyone out for that specifically. I just mean for kind of difficulty, get good. Folk in general.
Yeah. The only time I ever push difficulty is in rhythm games, honestly. I love expert difficulty in rhythm games. I love in Rocksmith getting a song up to 100%, and it just gives me all the notes because, in a well-designed rhythm game, it has you, just matching what is in the music as closely as possible.
So
that to me is very satisfying.
The song.
Yes.
And that's why that doesn't work for me in a game like Elite Beat Agents.
Yes.
Because the correspondence between the music and what's going on the screen never felt good to me. Never felt like it. But I will do the same thing in like a Rhythm Heaven. Yeah. As well. Like
the challenge modes in those. Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge modes. Exactly. When they do the remixes of the levels, like I will complete those games. Yeah. Tip the tails because I want the harder versions because they more closely match the actual music. Which I really care about. I am very similar. I'm a normal mode boy. I will for immersive sims. I do hard. Yeah, almost always because I want to, especially Dishonored games. Since the first one, I've been like pretty into playing that on hard. Yeah, because I like in getting in desperate spots. Like the game is a little bit too easy for me to complete on normal, just because you are so empowered in those games, and I want to have to desperately escape. Yeah. And I was very happy with my desire to do follow the advice and do Witcher 3 on one level above normal. Yeah. Not the super hard level, but the like give me a challenge level, because that ended up making the combat work for me. And I think for some people, when the combat didn't work for them, that might have been what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it exists for me. My overall preference, I think, is to not end up having to select a difficulty level at all, either to have it be dynamic or to have it be kind of determined by subtle choices that you make inside the game. So either the Resident Evil 4 approach, I think, is great because you're not actually like forcing you're not making a modal decision. And Dark Souls 2 is the other example where there are all kinds of levers that it gives you to either raise or lower the difficulty as it goes. I think that those are masterful in terms of just the agency that it gives you over difficulty.
Yeah, and Dark Souls in general is good at that. Yeah, with summons and the like of letting you kind of choose when you need to tap out within the actual fiction and kind of mechanics of the game. Something I wanted to bring up is that when I was thinking about this, when I read about it, is that I think the difficulty in games is and its quality, when it's good or when it's bad kind of design, is as subjective as anything else in games.
Mm-hmm.
And I am just, we are guilty of this as well, but it's not treated as such always. And the thing that made me think about this were two things. Like one was Immortal Unchained,
mm-hmm.
which it has that, like, and I mentioned it when we talked about it as being like cilantro game. Like, it is a game that some people are just like, this is the hardest fucking thing in the world. And it's different, it's just an extension of that, like Dark Souls finds your weakness.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
Like, I do not find the Anor Londo's archers hard. I do find the Anor Londo rafters extremely hard.
Right.
And other people are the opposite.
Yeah.
So difficulty is exactly as, and that also is the point in which it is fun or not, to be really difficult. And when people get frustrated and they say, why did you bump down to easy? They just have a different sensitivity for that and want you to have that really good feeling that they had. But it's just going to be very particular to you whether you can get that good feeling from that particular game.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it in terms of, like, I think I've walked away from Celeste. Like, I'm not going to play that game. I'm like 3 or 4 hours into it. I'm like on the 5th or 6th world into it. And it wasn't working for me very much in general. Like, it's not touching my heart, and I don't like Meat Boy likes that much. And I'm just not feeling good after I accomplish things.
Yeah.
And other people who love that game, like we just got through Game of the Year season and spent reading that as number 1 on thousands of people's games of the year, and reading nearly identical paragraphs about how special it is.
Yeah.
And they all just had that thing. Whereas for me, it's like there are multiple reasons I don't like it. Part of it is, though, that it's just like tuned to difficulty in a way that is not perfect to me. I'm getting through the things I feel frustrated more than I feel good about it. And that feeling of satisfaction and that feeling of just like, oh, I hit this good flow state with this isn't firing for me.
Yeah.
And it is, we try to avoid like subjectivity soup on the show, but it is really a thing, really, really hard as applied to difficulty. I think subjectivity soup like makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think so. And, a bunch of different things like Dark Souls finds your difficulty is a way that we describe that. We ran into that in the Final Fantasy X episodes talking about the Unalesca fight, right?
Yeah.
Where you just the way an experience breaks down for you will determine what your lasting impression is of it. And no matter how much you can kind of like look at the situation that the game presents you with and like understand what they were going for, if you didn't hit that and if you didn't kind of like go with it, it will always feel like this incredibly dissonant patch, right?
Yes.
And
I think that's an interesting perspective. I'm not trying to do this to fight our Pokemons about that, but I think the reason why it's not 100. So like one of the things about that, and I think that even if you have a better experience with it, like that, I think that would be really good if it had a little bit better signaling.
Yeah.
Like we talked about that in the episode. So it's not all entirely subjective. Like every once in a while you can find something that's like, oh, this is very difficult. It would be, and we had very different experiences that just led to us getting the signaling or not. If that signaling was hard coded into it, like if there was like a visual indicator or some kind of clue that it was going to do that, then I think that would have, saying that could be improved, like the difficulty would be more fair. You can like judge something on an axis of how fair it is. Right. And that's very much actually like a quantitative argument you can make about something, but you can't just be like how like difficulty itself in general is a little bit more like wiggly than that.
Yeah.
And doesn't lend itself to those kind of
I was using that example as kind of more to kind of dovetail with Dark Souls finds your weaknesses,
sorry.
Right.
I just it's an interesting because I don't want anyone to take away from this that I'm saying that like you can't say objective things about difficulty.
No. Oh, God.
Because I don't think that's true. Like you can say like, hey, actually this is unfair. If this had signaled this better, or if this was, X, then it would be better or worse. I think that is very valid. But when it comes down to like pure meat, like pure what's hard in your hands. That is much more subjective, I guess.
Yeah.
Pure meat that's hard in your hands. That's the thing that's subjective.
It looks like I blew myself.
Yeah. That's a different way to say that.
Yeah.
That is a subdomjective.
Yeah. And I think that just, what gets difficult, when we talk about something like, like difficulty, what's difficult about difficulty, is that there's an awful lot of vocabulary around it that doesn't make a lot of distinction between intellectual matters and, either relational or emotional matters, right? Just like I think that difficulty can be emotional as well. And the vocabulary that we use to talk about it is inelegant, and it's hard when you're talking to somebody else for them to know which level that you're addressing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like there are times where something will be very difficult and you are bringing a lot of mood to it.
Yeah.
In a way, and then presenting it as objective afterwards. And again, I think that we've probably been guilty of this as well. Where it's like I played this section of this game. I just happened to play it when I was having a super bad day.
Yeah.
And it made it seem more difficult and more bullshit.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there's no bullshit to it. But I think that like difficulty, you can make a stronger argument about it if you want to swim in objective waters by being like, hey, this was the specific failure.
Yeah.
That it had. It wasn't just that like, hey, that's actually just too fucking hard.
The time when we get bad about that is when we agree, when we both have the same experience and we just kind of like say, oh yeah, this was hard, or oh, that was incredibly easy, or that was a breather, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it can't be said, because again, the other half of that, and something that's always been part of the remit of the show and is secretly a remit to everyone who ever talks about games ever, is that they are just talking about their experience.
Yeah.
Like it's all pretty, subjective. Like all you can do is make arguments about something, and people can just like listen, and I had a similar experience. I had a different experience.
Yeah.
And that's where you're at. You're just there to listen to the arguments, and you run into problems, not just in difficulty, but in general, when you start presenting things, not as like an argument, like, hey, this happened because of this, but just kind of like, no, I know because X.
Yeah.
Then you can go to hell. Like generally, like I think that's a really obnoxious perspective. And I don't think we do that, which I'm very happy about. And I'm very conscious to not, be like, hey, listen, I get this, and this is, bad. We might just say, hey, this is bad.
Yeah.
But again, that's all through a frame of difficulty, like everything just being the subjective thing.
Yeah. Yep.
There's something else with difficulty I was thinking about in terms of this. So Jim Crawford of Frog Fractions was talking on Twitter, and he was talking about how he was retweeted Liz Rikerson, I think her name is, and she was talking about she was talking about Chips Challenge and how like old games have this very not out of the box design in terms of where part of the fun was figuring out how to play them and stuff. And that's definitely a value Jim obviously has, like from his output and his game taste. And what was really interesting about that is even down within, so he was expressing that as part of the challenge of the game.
Yeah.
As being part of that challenge. And he like brought up Dark Souls. He's like, first time you play Dark Souls, it's this big mysterious thing you have to figure out. And then every subsequent Dark Souls game you play, you just figured it out. So it's just a video game.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that. Like Dark Souls 1 prepared me for Demon Souls in a serious way.
Yeah.
But that kind of figuring things out, there's tons of nuance even within that. Like, I don't think that's inherently good either. I think a lot of games like try to do that esoteric stuff and fail at it. Like, oh, this is just supposed to be like, this is a weird little itch game that is supposed to be a mystery to figure out. And it ends up being not fun because of how it hits my specific challenge.
Yeah. Like, my example of that, and I don't mean this to be a criticism of something that I know a lot of people get a lot of joy of, but my experience with them is that's what Zach Gage games, not Zach Gage, but different things. Zachtronics. Yeah. Zachtronic games, like a large portion of those where it is figuring out what parts of the box are part of the game. That in particular, it provides a friction that discourages me from digging into them when I know that I would have a tremendous amount of fun probably if I could get over it.
Yeah, it's part of the challenge of the game, but it just it's not additive to you.
Yeah.
You know, so and I was thinking, like, when I started thinking about that, I started thinking, like, is like the pacing of visual novels part of the challenge of that for me? Like, is that a way to conceptualize my kind of dislike of that genre in general?
I think that gets into like a weird thing. Like, if you call something a challenging movie, like I would consider Inland Empire a challenging movie, but I don't know if it's a good movie. Like,
yeah.
You know,
I don't know either. I was just kind of experimenting with the thought.
Yeah.
You know, like, you do need a degree of patience, or like, what is that? Camelot, GBA, Golden Sun.
Oh yeah.
Like, those games have excruciating dialogue and everyone talks forever in them.
Yeah.
Is that an aspect of challenge? Because it is almost like a patience test to like get through that.
Maybe.
You know, I don't know. It's just like a weird. I was just thinking about how this could apply. This is me being very like stoned at Denny's. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not recording this at Denny's, but it's a stoned at Denny's thought.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of trying to think, like, it's not like everything, all taste can be filtered through challenge. But it is.
But is anything that makes you put a game down inherently a challenge?
And a challenge, and is it something where like games test different aspects, like strengths and appreciations of the person? You know, so like something like I don't think I'm as good at them as you are, but I'm pretty good at rhythm games.
Yeah.
So like, to me, I don't know about those challenges as quickly as other people might. You know, because I just happen to have an okay sense. I'm a musician. I have an okay sense of rhythm. Or if I think about like, you know, immersive simi games or like Infinity Engine, like moving my little guys around the board, those just inherently make sense to me. But when someone can't play Fallout 2, even though they love New Vegas, is that me bringing a strength to this that is being tested and they just don't have that specific strength? Well, while I lack patience for this other thing or whatever, you know, is that it's just a framing that I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the interesting question that raises is that there is not a single kind of patience, just like there is not a single kind of intelligence. And you've got a bunch of different patience currencies that each of us either have in surplus or deficit and spend at different conversion rates.
Totally. Because like, you look at something like, you know, it's like Bob, friend of the show, Bob Mackey, who like really, and this is not a value judgment, but like something being very too fiddly for him is a thing for him. Like systems being too fiddly, is a serious thing. Whereas something, you know, like a Phoenix Wright game that is lots of text and like, you know, that's super good for him. And I'm the opposite. Like it's very rare that I'm like, oh, this is too fiddly.
Right.
Like give me those fiddles. But it's like fiddles in an RPG sense, not fiddles in a Zachtronic sense.
Yeah.
You're like a programming fiddle, miss me with that. but an RPG like stat fiddle, like systems fiddle, yes. You know, but a reading fiddle, no.
Yeah.
Like my house has many fiddles in it. I bought it from the devil down at the crossroads. I said, let's raise the stakes on this motherfucker. Yeah, it's just an interesting, like, again, kind of semi-stoned sounding, but like kind of an interesting way of framing this. That the question made me think of.
Yeah. I've got two things that I want to bring up that are just like total miss me with that shit kind of things. I want to get your opinion on both of them. I'll do the easy one first.
Okay.
Which is games that shame you for the difficulty that you choose.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking miss me with that shit.
Yep. Yeah. Metal Gear Solid 5 chicken hat bullshit.
Miss me with the chicken hat. Miss me with like the dog mode in Ninja Gaiden. Like maybe I think miss me with like, even though it's kind of funny and doesn't really change the overall play itself, miss me with Wah Wah, I Want My Bottle in the Wolfenstein games.
Yeah. I agree. I don't like those either. I think that those it's a weird thing that was a big game design thing in Doom, you know, early 90s and then went away for a while and then came back.
Yep.
Very, very frustrating. There's where I talked about it in an old Check It Out Comrade, Castle in the Dark, I think is the name of the game. We played, which is kind of a fun little platformer, but the if you put it on the easy mode, I think it just like auto wins for you or something like that. Like it does it. I can't remember the exact nuance of it, but it does something really belittling and dumb. I dislike that immensely. I think that, so it's definitely missed me with that. And even when it happens, even in kind of like, so there's one of those in Immortal Unchained Like it kind of makes fun of you for losing a thing. And like, I don't mind that because nothing happens. Yeah, it's just kind of a joke.
I got that. And like when I saw it, I texted you about it, or I Slacked you about it. And I was like, did I get like a multiplayer thing? Like, is somebody trolling me? And you're like, no, it's just the game. It's the game trolling you. That I thought was funny. But also I didn't realize I had lost as much as I did when it triggered.
And it's like, oh yeah, actually, whoops.
And it was like that was kind of, it was making hay of my bad performance and not judging me for playing the game the way that I wanted to play.
Yeah, exactly. Making a choice about something like that. That is mild, that's a subtle distinction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I think that in general, like even the Immortal Unchained one I don't hate.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of best practices, like maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
That one doesn't actually hurt, but I don't like it as a direction really.
Yeah, it's an ethos that I'm just not crazy about.
Yeah. It's all with that good thing, which we somehow managed to avoid talking about this whole time. But like that's obviously related to all this nonsense.
We don't have to go on at length about it because we've been going for a little while. But the other thing that was like, hey, miss me with this. I think that there's a certain toxic question, and this pops up around the get good attitude and is raised by, the fact that Dark Souls has brought these hardcore action RPGs to prominence. And here's the question I think is toxic. Why is it worth playing something that isn't challenging to the point of exclusivity? The sub-question of that is, why is it worth playing something that isn't challenging to the point of whatever investment you put into it, be it time, be it money, etc.
Yeah, like why would you want, and even, taking that further, like why would you want to play something that is not challenging?
Right.
Like what is the point of playing something that is not doing this?
Yeah, I just the reason that I think that is a toxic question is it starts getting into who has the power to determine whether or not something is a game or b worth attention. It is exclusive, and I think that's a loaded word. The more functional version of that is it is disqualifying. Like it is an attitude that looks to
that you're doing in that respect is always generally like a little shitty. It's just a question you can ask yourself but never ask anyone else.
Yeah.
And like so many of those things, like it's there are definitely games I play that are too easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like but why would I care how somebody else experiences something like that if they're having fun?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it my business whether they're getting, it plays into that thing we were talking about earlier where it's like, it's just not your business or concern how somebody else is enjoying themselves or not.
No.
It can come like there's like 15% that comes from a really good thing about wanting to share this very rich experience you have.
Yeah.
In that respect, but 85% of it is gatekeeping bullshit, and you should divest yourself of it.
Yes.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it reminds me of that stuff. Like for a little while, there was a lot of those like think pieces, or I would see on Twitter, like people were just like, "Oh, I play every game on easy," and like I remember having an initial like response to that was like, "Oh, I would never do that."
Yeah.
But it wasn't like fuck those people or they were doing something wrong. It's just like, oh, that's a weird thought experiment for me to think about what that'd be like for me. Ugh.
Yeah. The reason that I recoil at that is like, oh, so seriously, every game? It's a little bit like somebody saying, oh, I always salt and pepper my food before I eat it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything?
Everything? You don't taste a little bit of it first to see what it needs?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I can understand that for like the part of this that I am here for. Like it doesn't matter how hard the game is. The ear example of that. This is a decade-old example, but I'll say it here anyway. Red Faction Guerrilla, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make there were a lot of people who said it doesn't make any sense to play this on normal or hard because the thing that is fun and the thing that you're here for is knocking buildings down with a hammer. Yeah, right.
I mean, I guess even that though too. Like that's a weird, like prescriptive fun thing.
Yes,
like people whenever you're asking a question like that about general to other game players or whatever, the thing you need to ask yourself first is, am I considering that there are lots of reasons to play games and somebody else might be playing it for a different reason than me?
Yeah.
Because I think about something like that and it's like, even just saying the reason you're doing this is to knock down buildings with a hammer. Like maybe that's not the reason I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You don't know me. Like anything that could be answered with a snaps in the formation of a Z and you don't know me. Like maybe you don't ask it. You don't know me.
The doctor says, you should really be finishing your antibiotics. You don't know me.
Yeah. Snap. You don't know me. At the end of the day, like, I play the games I want, play the games you want, and just let that be its thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because it's such a complicated like subject, because the same way that patiences have different types and currencies, like, so do this, like, depends on games entirely. Like, what's an easy mode game for me? Versus what's a hard mode versus what's a normal mode. Like, it's genre dependent. It's individual title dependent. It can change during the course of a game.
Is failure additive in this?
Is failure, exactly. Do I feel good or bad after I die in it? And that's it's just going to vary so much per game. It's never, it's never the same. And I think there is an argument that, like, a game is like one mark of a very good game is hitting the highest part of the bell curve for those things for the most people.
Yeah. And
that's why I think one of the reasons why, like, Dark Souls took off was because it was a good feeling difficulty for enough people.
Yeah.
It did inspire this kind of toxic culture, and there are a lot of people who have just problems with it and serious problems with it. They're valid. At the same time, like, it just, this is actually hitting that curve really well for enough people to, like, get this groundswell of goodwill and be, like, I don't know, the most influential game of, like, I don't know, the last quite a while.
I mean, if you count Demon Souls, like, decade. Yeah, easy.
Yeah, last decade, like, easy. Most influential game of the last decade. Like, it feels like to me. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, there, you see the DNA of it. So there is something to that, like, just hitting that highest part of the bell curve. But the thing about a bell curve is that, like, 50% of the people are not at the top, like, near the top of it even, really.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't take much to get a majority.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you want to do a lightning round?
Let's do a lightning round, and then we're going to do your responses to January's games, and then we're going to announce March.
Yes.
These are all quick.
Yeah. Corbin asks, what's your favorite kind of sandwich?
Lately, banh mi.
Banh mi is good. I am a child. Grilled cheese.
Grilled cheeses are amazing.
Yeah, it's comfort food. Like there are lots of functional sandwiches. Banh mi is an amazing sandwich. But yeah, grilled cheese, especially if you start getting weird with it and putting stuff on it. A grilled cheese with barbecue chips.
Like your dick. Like your weird dick, Kole?
Like my weird. Yeah, I put it on my griddle.
Yeah, the griddler.
The griddler ruined my dick.
Yeah, I'm during my winter break, a couple days, I ate 2 banh mi's in one day. It was awesome.
Yeah,
I bought one. I bought them both at the same time. I'm just like, I'm going to want to fucking re-up my anytime banh mi's later. Jack Corrigan asks, what makes the perfect buffalo wing?
Crunch on the outside, moist on the inside, not too much sauce.
Yep, I would agree. I think that crunch needs to be kind of subtle too.
Yeah.
Like, I've had ones that are like super fried, like that are just like
the
really
ones that are just like fried dough on the outside. No.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah.
I even think like noticeable breading is a problem.
Yeah.
Like, and Fire in the Mountain has taught me that, like, in that respect. Also, I mean, the perfect buffalo wing for me, that's a buffalo wing specifically. Chicken wing, I like a Thai chicken wing that has all 3 parts of the chicken wing.
Yeah.
3 parts. There are 3 parts. I watched a America's Test Kitchen video on them, and there's that one little part that is often thrown away, but is actually like mostly skin. It's really tasty.
The wingtip kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's the little it's a little weird little shoulder thingy.
No,
it was an informative video.
Cal asks, has there ever been a story about how friendship is bad? The episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that exposes and explores the codependent relationship between Dennis and Mac.
Yeah, that's a great episode. That's a great example.
It's the one where Dee gets a cat stuck in her wall.
Yeah, which is, and they just keep sending in more cats, which is very funny.
Bird on a string. Cat on the wall. Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's a great example. I want to see some video games about that shit.
Me too.
I never want to play another video game about how the power of friendship is good. Screw you, Final Fantasies. I'm done with your power of friendship games.
Yep.
Tom Jacques says, do you ever talk for your kitties? Like, lots of people talk to their animals. Do you ever make them respond? What are their voices like?
No, I don't do that. I will sometimes mimic my cat because she pretty much communicates in modem noises. Mm-hmm. She's a trill baby. But yeah, no, like my joke answer would be like, oh, she's a proper little lady, but I make her talk like Fat Albert. No.
Sure. Like a little Dr. Girlfriend.
No, I do not speak for her.
Roars was a Southern dandy, and I would only really do that to my wife, to make her laugh. Make Roars a little Southern dandy. And then Pocket, I'm afraid to do this because I think that the only correct answer is like Sonic the Hedgehog, and I don't want to think of him like that.
No,
that is the big Sonic energy that he presents.
The BSE.
The BSE, yeah, it's quite a bit. Andy asks, please get your thoughts on this insect phenomenon? I just found out about it yesterday. This is insects. It shows a group of caterpillars all moving, stuck together.
Yeah.
And it made me gag while eating breakfast. And my thoughts are that it's bad and disgusting. And fuck those caterpillars. I hope they never become butterflies. Somebody should stomp them out.
Yeah. My first thought on looking at it was like a licorice rope for birds.
Sure. I guess that's true.
Yeah. My second thought that it was both awesome and awful in the sense that both of those words share the same root.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would run the other way if I saw it. Similar to if you see a wall of daddy long legs breathing.
Yeah. You gotta go.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
Christopher asked, what is your favorite cocktail? I've answered this a whole bunch of time. It's an old fashioned. It's not a pretension thing. It's just my favorite cocktail.
Yeah. I've got a gutter palate. I don't really like cocktails because they're way too sweet. I think an old fashioned or a Manhattan are both too sweet for me. I like just rail drinks like X and Y. So a ginger, a ginger and bourbon is my go-to for those.
Sure.
Yeah. Specifically, if it's a ginger beer and it's extra spicy, then yes, that is my favorite. And also, if you want to put a cherry in there, I'm not going to complain. Too many places garnish a ginger and bourbon with a lime wedge, and I'm like, what the fuck do you think this is? A dark and stormy? Give me a goddamn cherry.
Different things.
Yeah.
Dark and stormies are good though.
Yeah. Oh, they're great.
Yeah. I think this is you on this last one.
Final one here. Spoon asks, what are your thoughts on sushi?
I'm exceedingly pro sushi.
Yeah. I would like to be exposed to more and better sushi in places where I've lived. Not really been very good sushi as far as I can tell. And mostly down in Cincinnati, there was Fusion Sushi, which was like Chipotle for sushi. And then here in Mansfield, they've got a place called Wokano, which I understand is okay, but I don't really have a lot of occasion to go there.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I don't do with seafood. I like fish and I like shrimp. I don't like fins, tentacles, mollusks, scallops, anything like that.
Yeah.
So, but if it is a nice piece of nigiri, like a nice piece of tuna or yellowtail on a bed of rice, I am very happy with that. And I love even just kind of middle sushi go round sushi. I really love, especially if I'm super hungry, because you just sit down and eat immediately. And I always feel good after eating it, and it's really cheap and it's awesome.
Yeah. So that's lightning round.
That is lightning round. That has been all of our questions. Again, if you didn't get your question answered, it will get answered in the future.
Yeah.
And right now we are going to talk about or read your responses and talk about your responses to January's games.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I will get us started here with River City Ransom, which Darth Hendricks. Oh no, or Hendricks.
So it's because of the style sheet on our notes page. It is Darth Ender X.
Oh, okay, Darth Ender X.
Yeah.
Okay. All good Sith names we have going on here. This is my content about River City Ransom. Hey guys, I just wanted to give you a heads up since I heard you were going to do the NES version of River City Ransom and talked about the GBA remake. I want to let you know that the 2016 3DS game River City Rival Showdown is also a remake of the original River City Ransom, though it may not seem like it at first. The game has a very Majora's Mask style setup, where the game takes place over 3 days, and you run around town showing up at various plot events and getting into fights and such, and depending on how you do, the story branches in different directions. But one way or another, the game still ends after 3 days. My first playthrough, I didn't really know what was going on, and I would show up to a bunch of events early and get my butt kicked. It wasn't until about halfway through the playthrough that I started figuring out which moves I wanted to buy, where I wanted to assign my stats, etc., and started winning my fights. But by then, the story was already on the bad path. I still managed to beat the bad path and then start over with New Game Plus. This time, I had the tools I needed to win all of the event fights I encountered, setting me on the path to the good ending. And it wasn't until about halfway through my second playthrough that I realized, wait, is this the plot of River City Ransom? And that's absolutely what this remake is. The game itself is also fantastic. It plays great and adds a frankly insane amount of content to the original game. I recommend checking it out instead of the GBA version.
You've done a very good job of selling that game to me, Darth. So thank you.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I will sometimes get too stressed out by a Majora's Mask setup. Like I like Majora's Mask. I like Dragon Quarter. I don't like Dead Rising. Like some of that, like you have 3 days and then you fail and then you try again. It's actually ties into that time stories.
Yeah.
Thing we were talking about earlier. Like it's kind of a similar feel to me. But that does sound really interesting in a River City Ransom context. Like it at least sounds like something super, like, I have to see.
At least the stuff that you're doing as you're failing miserably is still really fun. Yeah. But thank you for hipping us to that. It's $30 on the eShop, and that is too much.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'll just wait until it's a slow month. Now on to some responses about Owlboy. Nicholas writes via contact. I know you found it unbelievable how everyone in town thought Otis was a fuck-up, but that strongly resonated with my childhood. Like Osseo, my parents were convinced I had huge potential, but because of my slow learning and overall ineptitude, they got in the way, they would lose patience and belittle me. And because I lived in my parents' shadow in a small town, all our family friends saw me through that filter that had been crafted and treated me as such, albeit not as brazenly as the villagers and Owlboy. That said, it's disappointing how Osseo is never brought the task. At the end of the day, he gives the same excuse every needlessly harsh parent gives about actually believing you despite their strictness, and doesn't even apologize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it does come off as too harsh, but that was also through our like we talked about it by the time we had beat it. So the game not really being about that and the game not really looping back on that or having anything meaningful to say about it, like definitely colored those comments.
Yeah.
Like if it was going somewhere, but I mean, like coming the Todd Saladon's comparison or something like Welcome to the Dollhouse, like the movie that, wouldn't it suck if everything sucked? And that's how that movie's always seemed to me. And that's how Owlboy seemed to me. Yeah. And there's just no catharsis. There's no learning of a lesson. No one's right about him. He doesn't fuck up, but nobody ever gives him credit for when he doesn't fuck up. Like it's just kind of needlessly cruel.
Yeah. Yeah. Needlessly cruel is at the heart of what I was going to add to it too. So I think it.
Yeah. So it's not that it's impossible to have somebody who's treated that way. It's more that we said it was very harsh, and it seems very harsh because the game didn't do jack shit with it.
Yes.
Abraham says by contact. I love that name actually. I really wanted to like Owlboy, but I just couldn't get into it. I finished it mostly because it was beautiful both in visuals and the soundtrack. Otis's sprites are so evocative, and I really enjoyed being surprised by his expressions. Unfortunately, everything else just washed over me. The story was meh, but the visuals really did want me to just damn my critic and go along with it. I couldn't. I nearly gave up on the game when you got to space and lost the ability to fly. The jump mechanics are floaty and don't feel good, and the mechanical change there did not feel like a solid decision. I struggled through the end bit just for the sake of completing the game. Same.
Yeah. Fortunately, that is such a small sliver of the game.
Yeah, and it just, again, it's not doing anything meaningful. Like you can have somebody have an ability that's very empowering and feels really good and do a lot by taking it away and do a lot by giving it back. You can gravity gun. You can have that sequence, and that's not what Owlboy was doing.
No.
It's just not what happened. That game has aged extremely poorly in my mind, and I didn't like it when we recorded it. But when I've reflected on it, like I've just been like, I've just been very cranky about it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Eric writes via contact. Playing Owlboy felt like discovering a lost or underappreciated gem of the 16-bit era. This is not a compliment. For me, playing a hidden gem of the SNES/Genesis usually results in the same experience. There's a neat thing here or there. It plays somewhat better than the platform's baseline average titles, but it never compares to the era's best games. I can't imagine completing a new-to-me SNES title in our year of 2019 and having it slot in my personal top 10. Owlboy feels like that same second or third tier class of game. What's special there is absolutely the art and music. Strangely enough, I have to politely disagree with your assessment of the game feel, at least in terms of movement, which I found quick and snappy. Maybe my brain's just wired weird. Still, Even with the movement as an added third joy for me, in addition to its more substantial aesthetic pleasures, Owlboys still just feels like a competent tour of basic level design, cliched plot beats, and nonsensical characters. I enjoyed my time with it well enough, but it reminds me that sometimes a gem isn't a precious, rare thing. Sometimes it's just a pretty-looking rock you buy for $5 at a place that sells healing crystals and aura readings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's a place in Portland called Psychic Sister that my girlfriend's into, that I've gone into, that is this.
Yeah, technically turquoise is a gem.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with turquoise if you like it.
Yeah.
There's also nothing wrong if you thought the game movement. That doesn't mean your brain is wired weird. Maybe our brain is wired weird.
Yeah, I think everybody's brain is wired weird.
Yeah, all brains are wired weird. I love that point though about like when somebody describes something to me as a hidden gem from like the NES or SNES era, and I play them, I have a very similar experience to that.
Yeah.
And I really like that point about that. It's like, that
lines up with my experiences on Abject Suffering sometimes.
Yeah, me too. Like, it's like, I'll play something and it will be a little bit better than I thought. But like, so I remember, and obviously like putting aside all of its terrible racist connotations, like playing Wampum, right, for the NES, like, and it's like, oh, this is a hidden gem. This is a really good game. Like, it is good, but it doesn't mean it's as good, like, and just as a game again, like leaving aside all the cultural stuff, but it's not DuckTales good.
Yeah.
And it was never going to get there. Like, it does feel, that's a really good description, like better than the platform's baseline average, but doesn't compare to the era's best.
No.
And and that's how I felt about all of those type of games that I've had sold to me. So that's a trenchant point. Was that?
Except for Thimbleweed Park.
Yeah, Thimbleweed Park is actually extremely good.
Right.
That is the best hidden gem.
Yeah.
Of the old computer era, the VGA era. Doug says via contact, like you both, I was ultimately let down by Owlboy, especially in its mechanics. It got me thinking of a throwback platformer I liked much more, Celeste. While both games are beautiful to look at and listen to, their gameplay offers a stark contrast. Owlboy's motion is sluggish and its gameplay verbs are cumbersome to execute. Worse, the gameplay never builds those mechanics into potentially interesting puzzles. Celeste, on the other hand, not on the other sand, that's very different.
It's over
on
there.
The other hand, is speedy and only has two real mechanics, a double jump and a wall grip. Celeste, however, iterates on those simple mechanics by offering a variety of puzzles where those verbs can be applied in different challenging ways. This isn't to suggest that Celeste is perfect, but it demonstrates a solid lesson in less is more design. Super Mario Bros. Remains fun to play more than 30 years on for the same reason. Give me a character with a few verbs and an interesting world in which to apply them, rather than a character with a large number of verbs and nothing interesting to do with them.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that too. I think Owlboy suffers from both. I don't think Owlboy has enough verbs either.
Yeah.
It seems like he does, but even like when I got the third projectile and it was a better version of the first one.
Yeah.
It was like, this is a lack of imagination going on here.
Yeah, or there are verbs that are present, but there's not anything to do with them, like throwing, right?
Yeah, you just never have to really do it. You have to do it to do block puzzles.
Yeah.
So it definitely has that, like, there's nothing interesting to do, but also definitely has there's not a whole lot of things to do them with either.
Yeah.
Kind of feeling. So, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for Owlboy responses. Moving on to the lion's share of this.
Yes.
Unsurprisingly, Final Fantasy X.
People like Final Fantasy games. Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah.
Not me. Not Square with how they keep making. I don't know what that means.
I have no idea. I can't help you, buddy.
It means nothing.
I'll start us off here with Richard, who says, in high school, a friend and I were showing Final Fantasy X to another friend who was only familiar with Western RPGs. When the girl hands Tidus a blitzball and asks for our autograph, our non-initiated friend didn't understand that this was the game's cute way of asking him to name his character. Hence, he mistakenly named his Tidus Fuck Yo. That is so good.
This is a very funny thing to write on a blitzball. Somebody asks you to autograph.
Fuck yo.
Fuck yo. Yeah, that's actually really good.
It's tremendously good.
That's very funny. There's a dude I knew in high school who was generally like real funny and was kind of like a weirdo who was better friends with a friend of mine, so I wasn't like super close with him. Who played through Final Fantasy VII and named everybody like really lewd things.
Okay.
And I never do that. I always do canon names for stuff. But I was surprised by how, even thinking back to it, sometimes it makes me laugh because it allows you to do that. Like JRPGs are a big genre for that, and JRPGs are also a big genre for like extremely serious melodrama.
Yeah.
So like when, Cloud is crying, like everyone is on the airship, like talking about how like big tits ain't coming back and how like we have to, we have to get over the loss of big tits. Like, I don't know. I'm not made of stone.
No,
like
no.
I still think that's kind of funny.
Yeah. People don't grow up. Their younger version is still inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, you just add to them.
Yeah.
Like a big mound of mashed potatoes. You keep adding mashed potatoes to them. Ben says via contact. Blitzball is a great video game, but it's kind of annoying that there is an unskippable 5-hour interactable cutscene about a whiny time-traveling athlete before you can start the game. Also, weird translation issues. The port misspells Blitzball as Final Fantasy X.
List that in the goofs section of IMDb.
That is IMDb. Yeah, that's a goof tag. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised there wasn't a standalone Blitzball something.
Like a mobile game? Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like it would have been ripe for it.
And when they put out that version of Triple Triad on iPhones like a couple of years ago, that's not very good. I'm surprised they didn't try that with Blitzball as well.
No.
Because it also has that serious nostalgia factor.
Yes, and that god-awful Final Fantasy Portal app.
Oh, yeah. From the Final Fantasy IX guide.
Oh, no. Like on the phones, like that's how you played Triple Triad.
You're right.
What was like in a container app that had like just a bunch of, it just had hooks into all these free-to-play Final Fantasy things that were just total garbage.
Yeah. Cell phones are a big moneymaker for Square, and it sucks.
Yeah.
I wish they weren't making that money.
I deleted Mobius Final Fantasy off of all of my devices, but I still get push alerts.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did.
Beyond the grave.
I'm in hell.
Yeah, you can't. So it is called Mobius Final Fantasy. Like there's something kind of whatever the name of the daemon that is Mobius. Like that is very sinister.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Joe from Illinois says via contact, I saw you guys were covering Final Fantasy X, much to Gary's delight, I'm sure, Lola, and I had to reach out and tell a funny story. I was playing through this game with my best friend a couple of years back, with us discussing the game as we went. After what felt like the 20th time Tita says, "This is my story," something broke inside my friend. He just screamed, "No, it isn't, you fucking jackass. You are objectively not the star of this game. No matter how badly the writer wanted you to be, you are a supporting actor at best. I hate you so much." Afterwards, we looked at each other and had a good long laugh. To this day, one of us will occasionally just look at the other and say, "This is my story," while the other grimly shakes their head no.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Funny.
Yeah. I love the idea of losing your temper in a JRPG.
That's very good. Yeah. I wonder, like, because it happens in 12 too, and I'm not, and this is not me trying to like open up the Pokemon fight with 12, but I don't really like the main character of this game isn't your character thing. I think that's not interesting, and it means you spend a lot of time with a really boring or bad character before you get to anything interesting to know at.
Vaughn is a mistake. I think that the 12 succeeds at that because ultimately it really isn't about Bosch or Ash as well. Like it is really about the kingdom intrigue and the city, the Acuria. Yeah.
And obviously, like we really like that Witcher 3 is not necessarily Geralt's story, but it's enough of Geralt's story to make it not trigger this like.
I mean, Geralt and Geralt's great. Geralt is not Vaughn.
Geralt is no Vaughn. Even if you don't like Witcher 3, Geralt is no fucking Vaughn.
Yeah.
So that ends up making a big difference.
Yeah.
But just as a device in games, I just feel like you identify so strongly with your point of view character in games. That's part of the reason for games.
Yeah.
Is that like you do have that additional level of immersion and identification. Like, why would you want to have a really bad, bland character? Is that intentionally?
And Vaughn is absolutely a damning example of that because he was totally forced on that story and on that game because they didn't think the audience would identify with a 36-year-old bearded dude, right?
Yeah, because of the weird JRPG, like Pro ZD or Pro ZDP.
Yeah, I get his short videos and he's funny. Yeah,
he's very funny, and he just had the one that was like guessing ages in animes, and it made me think of that Lulu stuff. And it's just like a character who's just like I retired from the force to pursue becoming a full-time classical pianist. And in my spare time, I've caused the cure for the genetics virus.
I'm 19.
And he's like, oh, are you, you got to be like, what, 20, 28? I'm 14. It's like, what the fuck? Like, no. Like, it's just a real weird predilection for youth.
Yeah.
Like in terms of just not even just sexually, but just as like a, people have to be teenagers to be okay.
You cannot have an interesting story about anybody who
over 28
or anybody over 19.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, for as many problems,
pop culture.
Everybody's got a gem in their forehead that starts glowing.
Yeah,
when they're 18 and a half. I mean, like, for as many problems as that game has, like Catherine was such a breath of fresh air because it is a game about people in their 30s. Yeah.
It's so weird. Yeah. Such a weird choice to just never have anybody who's not a tiny kid. Like your audience is old now.
Yeah.
Your audience is old.
Your audience is old and does not necessarily covet their long lost youth.
Yeah. Try not having something set with high school students or below.
Yeah.
Let's get some adults up in this shit. I guess that's a cool thing about Yakuza.
Yeah.
Is like, I mean, I wouldn't be, if you told me like the Yakuza guy is supposed to be 18.
Yeah.
I would be really annoyed. I guess I wouldn't be that surprised, but I'd be pretty pissed actually.
Yeah.
Like, that sucks. But it seems at least like it's a game about somebody at least solidly in their mid to late 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to look that up though. That's going to have to forever remain a black box to me.
But I mean, and that'll be thrown off by Yakuza 0. But I think that after you've put out like 5 games, it's okay to go back and say, this is what he was like when he was like 20.
Sure. Yeah. But he can't in Yakuza 6, he can't be 20 because that would mean Yakuza 0, he's like 12. And I just like wouldn't be surprised. I just, what the fuck is up with that?
Baby crime.
Yeah. Baby crimes division. Baby and entering. Brian says via contact. Final Fantasy X is what got me to buy the PS2. I saved up for months to buy it and was super excited to start playing it when I got home. Then I discovered the error I had made. This was the first console I had bought myself, and so I was unaware that memory cards were sold separately, and the person that sold it to me hadn't mentioned it either. I was a year short of being able to drive myself, so that meant waiting an extra week until I could get a ride to town. I resisted the temptation to start a game since I'd have to start over anyway. That lasted all of 3 days. I started up intently to play just a little bit to see how it was. Just a little bit ended up being all the way to Luca, just after the Blitzball tournament. I think that really stuck with me because after that, I always made sure I had a way to save data with anything I bought.
Yeah. That was a problem with working at a game store, kind of at the tail end of that era. Started working in 2003, 2004. So the PlayStation was still a thing. And like there were multiple different versions of the Xbox 360 with different storage, and telling a young person who had a fixed budget or telling a parent like, oh, you're going to need this extra thing or else this is going to be a useless brick in your house. It's like that is good advice, but also it comes across as a sales pitch.
Yeah. That's a real bummer.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. I remember that just being like, at the time I had my own money, but when the PS2 came out, but also it was like throwing an extra 30 or 40 bucks on it.
It was like half a game, like buy a half a game on top of this.
Just to, just to be able to play it. Yeah. That was a real bummer, honestly. I still have a bunch of my memory cards. I don't really hook up those systems anymore. Like, cause of emulation and stuff, but it's pretty fun to like look through them.
I've got a bunch of them.
I love PS1 and PS2, the little animations that play.
Oh, so good.
On the icons. Somebody should do a Tumblr of all those, actually, if there isn't one.
Yeah.
Those things own.
Good idea.
Yeah. Precisely Jay. Is this me or you?
I forget. I think this might be me. Yeah, okay. This is me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is you.
Precisely
JSF.
Yeah, Precisely Jay says via contact, I was in early high school when Final Fantasy X came out. I was less about games in general than punk bands and riding skateboards all day, but I had been a fan of Final Fantasy for years. For me, though, FF10 was one of the main tentpoles of what I, at the time, considered to be the end of RPGs. I remember the marketing of Final Fantasy X as relying heavily upon how much of a movie it was, that it was going to look, sound, and feel like a movie. That marketing and the reports that so much of the gameplay was basically on rails was an armada of red flags that Squaresoft was, to a young punky kid selling out to cash in on getting more filthy casuals and no longer gave a crap about making a good trademark game. Also, Spirits Within happened around the same time to further break whatever spirit that I had left within me. Good, well turned. Thank you. I was furious at Square. It was the first major time I had felt personally betrayed by a gaming company. I wasn't completely up on gaming news at the time, and I'm not sure if maybe I would have seen this coming had I been paying more attention, but it felt like one of my favorite gaming companies had completely lost what had made it special in order to chase that Hollywood status. I played a lot of Final Fantasy X at the time, but I was so disheartened by all the changes that I found almost no joy in it.
No joy in it.
Yeah. The announcement of the Enix merger shortly after seemed like evidence to me that they were never going to be the same again, and it took years before I was able to say Square Enix without spitting on the ground. I will say that I rediscovered the soundtrack later on through the piano collections, and tracks like To Xanarkand really shine in that format since you can hear the Uematsu influence more prominently. It's a high recommendation. I highly recommend all of the Final Fantasy piano collections, but between my love of those tracks from 10 and your podcast reminded me what isn't just marketing gimmicks about the game, I am probably going to give this another go on the Switch so I can find out how out of line younger me actually was for being so mad about this game.
That's interesting. For me, this is like a turning point too, though. Like in replaying it and feeling those comparisons to later, to the dreaded Final Fantasy 13, corridor RPG thing, like it does make me feel like this is a turning point. Like, and I like 12, not as much as you do, but I still like it. Like, I think that is a blip.
Yeah.
They gave the Final Fantasy Tactics guy a game, and he did something interesting because he's the Final Fantasy Tactics game guy, and of course he did.
Yeah.
But in general, like this is kind of a turning point for RPGs for me. Like the PS2 era was very dire to me in terms of RPGs, and it was still when I was pretty in the pocket for them. So like, yeah, I tried to choke down Xenosaga, and like I tried to choke down Rogue Galaxy, and like they're bad. They're slow. That move towards like cinematic and corridor presentation was kind of an industry thing with the genre at this point.
No, I mean, 2000 was the last year that I was really engaged with JRPGs in the way that I was, so into them for pretty much all of the time when I could choose games in the 90s. Like Chrono Cross came out that year. I love Chrono Cross to bits. This came out that year. I played this and enjoyed it, back in the day. And then after that, I never even to now. The only JRPG I've really engaged with is Final Fantasy 12. Yeah,
especially from this era. Like, there are things that came later that got interesting again, but this, I think that the turn of century was really bad for this genre.
Yeah,
like,
and like the 360 and PS3 era was no better.
I mean, or worse. It just continued these trends. Like there were fewer games, but when they came out, they were more movie-like, less interactive, simpler,
so excessive,
etc.
Yeah. Like 10 absolutely, that would like it was marketed as a movie, but so was 7. Like the reason so many people got 7 was because of the commercials that showed all the CG cutscenes, Well,
but there's an important distinction there because 7 is less of a movie though.
Yep. Yeah.
Like in reality, like yes, they're both marketed the same way.
Oh, but
it was
an indication of the direction Square was going, I guess what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I would like sometimes think about like what the world would be like. I don't have all the sales figures. I don't know how much it influences things, but 9 being their like throwback goodbye to that style. Like, what if that had been their 7 and just had been like a wild success? Like, what would Square be like if they didn't go in for whatever you would call their aesthetic now? Like their weird like modern motorcycles and cars exist, but also everyone looks like they're in My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
Like kind of style. Like if that just didn't happen and they kept with that, like kind of, frankly, like very quaint and beautiful, like well-designed FF9 kind of style. I wonder what that would be like.
If they never did the Amano Kingdom Hearts switchover.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think about that sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, probably good instincts to duck out of Dodge around that time. Like, yes, you can loop back and there are games, there's still interesting things that came out around that time. Like Dragon Quest VIII is there, which is a game I played all the way through, and I don't know if I'd like it now, but it's not bad quality. And the Persona games started coming to PS2 a couple years after that, and those are interesting. So there's still good stuff, but there is just a wave of boring ass, like bland cinematic JRPGs from that time.
All I can think of is somebody really trying hard to sell me on Lost Odyssey.
Yeah.
Nope.
I keep thinking, I've thought about many times, like when I think about like if there was a franchise, that would be the franchise I would least want to do for like a show. And like Final Fantasy is a very long franchise. I still think I would rather do all the Final Fantasy games than do all the Xeno Prefix games.
Oh fuck! For fuck's sake, man.
Yeah, like that's dire.
Yeah,
like that's like it. Like that starts bad and gets worse. And then I don't think I could do like the Xenosaga games. Like I got so upset at those. Like because I was still in that pocket where I was just like, oh yeah, cool. Like JRPGs, like I like these. Like,
I was into it. I was even like down for like some of the cinematic stuff. Like, oh yeah, like this has long cutscenes. I liked Metal Gear Solid 2 just fine. Nope.
Yeah, they're just really boring games.
Sorry, bye.
Yeah, like exceedingly boring. Bad games. And there's 3 of them, and they're longer than anything. Like I'd rather do the .hack series than those. Hook me up. Give me that dot hook up. I don't.
I never played any of those.
I played the first 2 of them. Yeah. They're weird. They're serialized, but it took forever between entries coming out. Like they're kind of interesting. I don't think we should do them for the show, but they're kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Their whole thing is like a fake internet within them.
I dug that as like a back of the envelope pitch for them, but
yeah. The actual mechanics are nothing special.
No.
Steven says by contact, Waka looks like he killed a family of raincoats. Yay. And is wearing their hides. He has a dumb haircut and his weapon is a ribbed soccer ball. He's racist and religiously conservative, but he's weirdly one of my favorite characters in the series. He has an arc. I really like that the game introduces him as a lovable buddy, the kind of guy who will give you the straps and zippers off his back. But later on, he shows a less flattering side when he's prejudiced against Riku, whom we've also already met and have positive feelings about. I'm not sure if the game has anything interesting to say about racism, but I do like that Waka grapples with these attitudes and slowly grows past them. The voice acting really helps, of course. John DiMaggio really elevates the material with a ton of charm. On an unrelated note, the main musical motifs of the game's soundtrack are outstanding. The way the music swells during the climax of the game's climactic moments between Yuna and Titus are heartbreaking and beautiful. It's sweeping melodrama on a scale that the series does particularly well. Final Fantasy X is a mixed bag in most respects, save for the amazing battle system, but I'm okay with that. I still have a lot of affection for the game, including its rough spots, and it remains fun to play and experience the story. Revisiting it recently revealed that not all of it has held up for me over the years, but it really does make me pine for a new game in the series that builds on this iteration of the Final Fantasy battle system. Thanks for covering it for the show, and I'm excited to hear the episodes. I do not like these games, but the Bravely Default games are not that dissimilar in terms of the battle system and letting you like manipulate the timeline. Like I don't like those. I can't recommend them, but if you just want the battle system, you should give them a shot because they are popular. You may like them. They've broken down the characters. There's 4 characters. In the first one, it's 3 non-participants in terms of personality and 1 horny. And then the second one, apparently, it's 2 non-participants in terms of personality and 2 horny.
Oh, damn it.
But there's just 2 like unflavored for me. 3 in the first one. Just like, nope, I prefer not to have a trait. I'm going to do the deprived mode when it comes to picking having a personality.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's a funny little goblin with us. How old is he? 10? Okay. That's Bravely Default.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I never fucked with those.
Not that bad. This is a very funny first paragraph.
It's really good. Thank you. That was quite funny. I don't know if that I have anything to add. I agree. I like the musical motifs in this game.
And we came away feeling very similarly about Waka. Like he's a real shithead. I also think the game doesn't have anything meaningful to say about racism other than that, like it's kind of bad.
Yeah.
And calling it an arc that he goes through is really hard for me. Like he just kind of like is racist, realizes he shouldn't, and then just kind of spends the rest of the game shell shocked.
Yeah.
Like he's backseated pretty hard once that happens. But it is weirdly the best character, like by a lot.
Well, what it says about racism is it takes all of your assumptions and everything you held to be true about your identity to be undone by catastrophe in order for you to realize that it is wrong.
Yeah.
So
you literally had to be deconstructed piece by piece.
Yeah.
Like religion has to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And then you cannot be a racist. So get on it.
Weird.
MAGA kids.
Eno, or Ino, says via contact.
I know.
I know says via contact. I was generously allowed to borrow a PS2 around 2008 and 2009. I played through a bunch of classics that I had missed since I was not a console owner. Xenogears I slogged through in 6 months. Final Fantasy IX was a breeze, took me 3 weeks, and at first I bounced off hard from Final Fantasy X. The beginning was just silly and empty. Compared to having just played 9, the gears clearly were not clicking together yet when jumping into the PS2 technology, with the aesthetics, the voice acting, etc. The storytelling in the beginning was quite disjointed, and the game couldn't pull me in. I recall I got as far as landing on the beach, meeting Waka, and deciding, no, this just isn't great stuff. I slowly trickled back into it. I was able to accept the silliness, and the characters grew on me the way there. I had named Titus Burritos. I was drawn to Lulu's character because she seemed to be in on the joke, including her dislike of burritos. Only after playing it, I learned about the character bonding system behind the curtains, which explained the number of little scenes that I got with Lulu. I was very happy about that. She was my harsh mentor. She has a great theme too. I have rearranged it a few times, and there's a shameless plug of an OC remix. I like OC remixes, so I will go and check that out later. Continuing, the battle system was something that was very welcome after 9. I did enjoy working towards new abilities, so even random battles didn't feel like a waste there, but boy, was it slow. 10, on the other hand, whoosh, and you're actually already fighting like the 16-bit games. Plus, you can see the queue of turns, can swap characters in and out of the battle like nothing, and you get this satisfying character building system. No complaints that I recall from 10 years ago. I really didn't mind the game's linearity. It felt like a road movie to me in that way. It's a silly story, but as such, it is enjoyable. I insisted on calling Sin Finn throughout, since there's that early battle with his fin sticking out of the water. Lots of memorable scenes in the game for the wrong reasons. You can make a lot of fun out of it, and it still manages to be genuinely endearing. At least that was my experience with it. Good times.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, like it does have that kind of like, I'm skeptical of somebody or the attitude, not a person, but the attitude of this just being like, this is high deep art.
Yeah.
And is beyond reproach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is not an appropriate tact for Final Fantasy X. I don't think it's deserving of that. But saying like, no, it's actually like, yes, it has these problems. It's a mess, but like it's pretty goofy and endearing. Like I think that it can get by on that.
Yeah. Endearing can go a long, long way.
Mm-hmm. Jack says by contact. Like you guys, I did love the Final Fantasy X battle system during my first playthrough. It made me feel powerful and clever as I used all my characters to mow through stunlock and otherwise completely trivialize the vast majority of random encounters. However, between the encounter rate and the very weak palette swaps, this quickly grew intensely tedious during subsequent playthroughs. I don't necessarily see the point of view that tedium is a useful mechanic. I appreciate the way the game wanted me to feel smart for figuring out which character unlocked the one-hit kill option for each random enemy, but it quickly became akin to memorization / flashcards. I just didn't have any fun during my replay due to this patronizing method of random encounters, unfortunately. Lots of sugar talk about both the visual representation and articulation of the sphere grid, but I think that'll be much more well-trodden ground.
Yep.
Insert lots of talk.
Yes.
So everyone can just kind of make that in their head.
Yeah.
The encounter rate in this was a big bummer to me on revisit too.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Like I was expecting this episode in general to be a lot more negative than it actually turned out. I think it is an interesting game and stuff, but the actual experience of playing it, like, insert kind of WAF JRPG.text here, like the encounter rates are too high in general, and most of the time I spent fighting palette swaps in the desert, and that sucks.
Yeah.
There's no defense for that. That's just bad.
They wait way too long to bring any kind of enemy variety.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree. Like I like this point about, it being intentional, that it's like, hey, here's a flying enemy. It's a lock. Waka is the key for that.
Mm-hmm.
But just, yep, I learned it. Oh, wait, there's
you're just going to keep testing me on this?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I'll just do the same test over and over.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's more successful than when they bring in the bosses that you can choose the distance from.
Oh yeah, like boss fights, it actually is very good. I just mean the rank and file.
Oh yeah,
encounters
where it's
just
just like,
be fun pretty quick.
Like the entire game is the road out of Besaid. The tutorial battle road. Yeah.
Yep, and that's pretty undefensible.
Yep.
So,
finally here, Dan writes in via contact. Thank you, Jack. I was about 10 when this game came out, and it was my first full JRPG. In saying this, it was way before I had an understanding of experience points and grinding, so I spent a lot of my 40 or so hours with this game spamming hit and hit only and run so I could get through to the next story beat. This left me super underleveled for the end game, and I could not face the idea of throwing out the pacing of this story to go grind once I had reached Zanarkand. But then I heard about Yojimbo and my fears were quelled. I sought the secret Aeon and negotiated with this bro to come and one-shot and win the game for me, in exchange for all of my gil, of course. This may sound cheesy, but I loved the headcanon of my band of insanely incompetent guardians bartering with what felt like an omniscient capitalist mercenary god to drag him out of his cave to join the fight. A strangely emergent, satisfying conclusion that suited most of the rest of the characterization of the characters so far. Thought it was an interesting articulation of a 10-year-old's perseverance in a game system. Yeah.
That first paragraph is very damning. Like that, just like, I just ran away from everything because I wanted the story. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to, do this. Mm-hmm. And the game, like obviously it's fine that it didn't allow for that because it wants you to play it.
Yeah.
But like that is just like, woof, what a miserable feeling.
Yeah.
That is. So.
Yeah, and I love any read. I mean, like there's a little bit of that there. Like the Guardians take their eyes off the prize so many times that I don't think that it's entirely headcanon. But I love reads on game protagonists as being incompetent. I mean that is entirely why I love Dragon Age 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My friend Eric played Final Fantasy VIII, and because summons were the most powerful thing that you could do, that's all he did.
Oh yeah.
He just didn't engage with the junction system at all. It just, every battle he just summoned as many times as he could.
Oh, nice.
And that sounds also like a hell.
Well, that sounds like a way to make an 80-hour game a 160-hour game.
Exactly. Like, fuck me. Like, no, thank you. And I just remember telling him, and he was like, it's the most powerful thing. I'm like, we don't have to do it. And he's like, what's the most powerful thing? And I was like, well, we're at an impasse.
Yeah,
I guess. Yes. Somebody solve this Israel-Palestine that we got going on here between these two things. And I'm not going to assign sides in that because
that's fraught.
Yeah, it's fraught, and I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it was very goofy.
Yeah.
That's a thing. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, boy. Good first dispatch, long, meaty. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you guys like it. Let us know.
Yeah, please do. This is experimental. We can fine tune it as we go. Again, if your question was not answered back in the Q&A, they are still held back. If we end up getting enough of them, we may do like a special extra kind of thing to clear through them.
To clear out the backlog. If you like this, if this this is a good length, let us know. Mm-hmm. If this is not, or if this is too much, if this is longer than you want, let us know as well.
Yeah. For the listener responses, if you have things to say about Super Mario 2, Pyre, or BioShock Infinite, or its DLCs, the deadline is February the 15th. So go to Duckfeed.tv/contact and write those in. If you have thoughts about multiple games, please split those into multiple messages for us. That just makes it easier for us to include your response.
Please. And now the time everyone's been waiting for. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't stay till the end of the podcast, you'll just tweet me and I'll probably just tell you.
Yeah.
Great. What we're doing in March. Mm-hmm. This is like I said, we still have theme months where people had patronized and requested these, and we're clearing those out.
Yeah.
So we're honoring all of those obligations, and this is a theme month from Michael. And I closed the window.
Yes, it is Michael Benavidez.
Michael Benavidez. Thank you, Michael. And Michael's suggestion was kind of survival desperation.
Yes.
/ desperation as a theme.
Yeah. Let's get real bummed out.
Yep. We're going to get bummed out and desperate and hard Scrabble. So we're just going to play the hard mode of the GBA Scrabble port for the entire time.
And I'll be eating Scrapple while I do it.
Yeah. Hard Scrabble. So that month we are going to be doing Papers, Please. which is that indie darling from the same maker of Obra Dinn. Last year's indie darling.
Yeah.
And interesting game about totalitarianism and paperwork. We will be doing Frostpunk.
Yeah, by the team who did This War of Mine, one of my favorite games from the year that came out. I'm very curious about this. I like that. I adore that team, and I want to see what they do with something that is a little bit further removed from reality.
Yep, I'm really looking forward to playing that game too. We've never really covered anything quite like that genre. And then for the premium episode that month, we're going to be doing Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl.
Yeah.
It's been requested for like the entire time the show's been on.
I have wanted to play it for a decade. And for the portion of that decade that we've been doing the show, I have put it off because we're going to do it for the show sometime. And here, 8 years later, we're doing it.
Finally happening. Yeah, I've played it before. I'm really looking forward to it. I really like it. It's the kind of thing, it's hostile and it makes sense to bounce off it, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Extremely interesting game. I've never played any of the sequels. This is the point in the show where I say, like, maybe I'll get ahead and like play one of the sequels too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll have time to do that. But I am looking forward to revisiting the original.
Yeah.
So that's March. If you like this show, you can no longer do a theme month, but you can patronize us and dictate a game. Stalker was actually the one that Michael dictated for that. So when you do those things, you can actually choose just a game. You can't do a month now, but you can choose a game by becoming a patron. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, that is a one-time thing. So the idea is you patronize us at that level. If you want to continue to give us that amount of money per month, I'm not going to stop you, but you don't have to.
Right.
You can do it once. We'll reach out to you, and then you can drop your pledge down to what you feel is a reasonable level for your budget.
Yeah. That is also the way that you get additional things like Bonfireside Chat, the rekindled series of that, or the full episodes of this show when we describe Stalker as being premium. Everybody's going to get the generalities, and that's a real systems heavy game, so that there'll be plenty there to for everybody. But to get the kind of beat by beat kind of second portion of the game, that is available for patrons.
Yep, and next month BioShock Infinite is that episode. You might be thinking, wait, you guys didn't do that. We didn't do it in January because we didn't want to spring it on anybody.
Right.
We'd already announced those in case anyone was playing along, etc. If we had done that this month, it probably would have been Pyre.
Yeah.
Or not Pyre, sorry, Owlboy.
Yes.
I got confused. It probably would have been Owlboy.
Yeah.
But next month it's BioShock Infinite.
Yes.
So keep an eye out for that.
And to remark on the way the Patreon is going, it's incredibly heartening. I love it.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. We're actually pretty close to the goal of doing a third live show in the year. So if you want to see us come to your zone, that is a way to hopefully make it happen. Like there has to be a convention there that makes sense. But if we're doing 3 of those, I think, my goal is not to just do, like we've kind of made a second home in Milwaukee. It is really fun to do that con. That third one, I would really love to have be a rotating thing.
Yes.
So like we'd like to come back to Austin. People have asked us for that, but like, why not Vancouver? Why not? I would love to go to the East Coast. Like, I would love that to be a rotating thing.
Yes.
And I think with that third one unlocked, like we will feel a little less gun shy about doing smaller things.
Yes.
So it will be purely as like to get out and get to different regions, so yeah, we're pretty close to that.
Yeah.
So hit us up if you're interested in that. Also, just by way of admin, like if it's not going to be in the dispatch episode, I never knew where it'd be. Somebody on Curious Cat asked me like whether we're okay with somebody patronizing us at $10, getting the backlog of stuff, and then dropping down. And the answer is yes.
Yeah, we built that in.
Yep, we recognize that. Like 2 things. Like 1, we can never police that, but 2, like we want people to hear that stuff. We understand everyone's budget is difficult. Or is different rather, and sometimes people have budgetary concerns. Like, if that's what makes sense to you, that's okay.
Yeah, we understand budgetary concerns. That's why we have a Patreon.
Exactly, like we have budgets.
Yeah.
If you same thing. If you're a big Watch Out for Fireballs fan and you hate this change, a couple of people have said things about that. Like not very many actually. The response has been extremely positive. Not just in terms of output, and patrons, but also just in terms of like support, which I really appreciate. If it's something where you just can't afford it and you feel like, oh no, like my favorite show is being taken away. 1, you just got this show, which I think this episode that is like what? 2.5 hours?
2 and change. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 and change, like pretty substantial, added value, we think. But 2, there's nothing stopping you. So those backlogs are just going to be available. So there's nothing stopping you from putting $1 aside a month in 5 months, donating, a $5 patron, downloading the last 5 months of WoF.
Yeah.
And then dropping your pledge down to whatever feels reasonable to you.
Same with Bonfire Side Chat. Wait a couple of months, put in the 5, get the others. Just think of it like trade waiting for comics.
That's actually a really good analogy, Kole.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like, obviously, we price those tiers to where we think that what we provide on a weekly or a monthly basis is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
If just our druthers, like, support us at $10 because you get that fire hose, but it's not a transaction. Like, you're not necessarily buying the thing from us.
Right.
And then dropping down. Like, that is a way you can game the system.
Mm-hmm.
One person can game it. But we recognize we want to treat you as good faith, and you're not trying to game the system.
Yeah.
You see this as something more than just transactional. It's just, this is the degree that you can support.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize, like, obviously it is better for us if you're able to just kind of get those episodes as they come out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not able to, though, we understand and we're cool with it. You're not hurting our feelings.
Yeah. It's something we accounted for and built in. It's just not, it's not, don't feel like you're getting one over on us.
Yes, it is A-okay.
Yep.
So this has been a long episode. We will see you next week to talk about Super Mario Brothers 2s. The Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yeah. Developed by Liam Neeson's.
Hey, we're doing a new thing at the end of these episodes. I know Via Contact wrote in during that and talked about their OC remix of a song from Final Fantasy X, and we're going to play it here. So be on the lookout if you're a patron. Be on the lookout for when we put up our Q&A post. And if you have some music that you've done that is game related, or maybe even sometimes not game related, but probably game related, and we dig it, we will highlight it in an episode. So definitely check out, EINO, that's EINO, on OC Remix, and check out this awesome remix of the Lulu theme.